Good morning, everyone. Pleasure to be here. Blair O'Connor from the Net Zero Technology Centre. We are a government-funded agency based in Aberdeen, in Scotland, and we fundamentally fund and deliver net zero technologies for the energy transition, working with the offshore energy sector. So the title of my presentation today is creating a data collaboration ecosystem in the offshore energy sector to unlock the full potential for digital twins. And really what I'm going to be sharing is some of the lessons that we faced on a project and share some of the experience that went alongside that. So the project that I'll be touching on mostly was the OEDA project, which was the Offshore Energy Digital Architecture project. It was made up of a consortium of 14 organizations, a real mix of oil and gas operators, the regulator, technology companies, consultancies, the catapults. And so there's a real mix there, a real range of voices within the consortium itself. Sorry, there's a little bit of background noise there. If you wouldn't mind just going on mute for me. So the overall approach for the OEDA project was that we fundamentally wanted to showcase that a data sharing platform that was industry-wide was technically feasible, and so we fundamentally wanted to utilize existing technology that's been successful elsewhere in other settings and other industries. And so we adopted the Foundry platform, Palantir's Foundry platform, to do that. We wanted to bring in experience and knowledge from other sectors where this type of deployment has been successful. So we worked with Indu, who are a spin-out company from Airbus, the digital transformation office in Airbus, and who have experience working with the Skywise program, which is an ecosystem made up of hundreds of airlines sharing data right across the board. So we wanted to bring that in. And we wanted to ensure that we had strategic alignment with what was the main focus for the energy sector. So we looked to deliver on the recommendations that were put forth in a report that came out last year, produced by the Energy Systems Catapult, the Offshore Energy Data Strategy Task Force report that came out. And within that, there was a recommendation for a common data toolkit. So that's what we aimed to do. And the final piece was to showcase how a data platform could work, how this ecosystem could function. We really just had to follow the data. What could we get our hands on to showcase that this is technically feasible? On the right-hand side, there are some of the work scopes that we produced as part of the OEDA project. I'll not go into detail there, but really it's a series of reports that we produced to showcase that the concept is technically feasible. So we looked at what else is out there on the landscape, what else has been successful, what tools have been applied, technologies. We then got into the detail about how Foundry can be adapted to meet the needs, etc., of industry. We produced a business model for how that could operate in the future. And we produced an MVP, so a pilot based on the data that we got our hands on, that we then showcased to industry about how could they work together with the data that we got given as part of the project. And finally, a benefits report really that just sums up the lessons learned that we, I guess, found out during the life of the project. Just briefly, we went on a journey in the project. We got grant funding back in 2021. In 2022, really, we built the consortium from nothing. We then went on, the project itself kicked off last September, so it's really winding down to a close now. But over the last year or so, we've had to produce workshops, demos, various meetings, various engagements, really to develop use cases, to get data to showcase in an MVP and to showcase how this whole data platform, what could be technically feasible and is technically feasible. So we went on that journey over the last year or so. We're really coming to a close at the turn of the year now. But this slide here really is something that I guess I'll talk to at length here. So some of the common challenges that we faced in developing this data ecosystem, this data platform, was really the winning the hearts and minds for organizations, repeated engagements, trying to convince organizations to take part in this, taking up various approaches within that to make sure that we got the right level of buy-in and the right types of organizations that could supply data. The technology itself, so we had to decide on, right, what was our approach here? Were we going to use a existing technology or we're going to build it? So we had to decide on what to do and go through the various options that were presented to us. We had to identify and develop use cases. So this will undoubtedly come up in various similar settings as what's your use case and why are you using that. And fundamentally for us, we had to develop use cases based on what we could get our hands on. So we had to spend a lot of time really, refining those use cases to make sure that we could develop something that was going to work at the end of the project. A lot of time was spent on actually finding the data, actually, querying what is out there, where is it located. Some of the companies use third parties, etc. It's quite a complex myriad to, actually get your hands on data itself. Within the offshore energy sector, it can be quite convoluted in terms of who actually owns the data. Legal discussions, that can be quite a painful point. So, if that's something that really led to quite a lengthy delay in getting our hands on the data itself. I'm sure it's been, there's people in the room here that have experienced those same types of engagements, and that was the same experience that we faced within offshore energy. And really just trying to do all that within a project timeline is really difficult. We were given grant funding from the Scottish Government for a set period, using financial years, etc. So really just trying to develop a data ecosystem in a short space of time is very challenging. What I have on the right-hand side, though, is what I consider to be the critical challenge is how do you get people to actually use it, right? So within an ecosystem, there's a whole range of companies, a whole range of people. Now, trying to get the right level of buy-in is really challenging to showcase how an ecosystem could function. And I think everything on the left we achieved. What you see on the right-hand side is something that we would look to develop going forward. But I think there needs to be, from what I experienced, is that there needs to be a recognition that to develop an ecosystem, it almost needs to become part of people's jobs and their job function. It can't just be a useful add-on, really, to actually develop these types of platforms, these types of rich interactions. The whole structure around how companies collaborate really needs to be rethought. So that was my learnings. That was my experience from the project. Going forward, I think what I've got here on this slide is what we followed. We followed this model on the left-hand side, but going forward, to develop this type of thing in future, we would really be looking for industry funding up front with, dedicated resources from the beginning. I think fundamentally you need to recognize that there needs to be skin in the game from multiple partners to develop this type of ecosystem in future. And without that, you just risk going around the wheel if, for example, you're relying purely on innovation funding. So I think ultimately for this type of ecosystem to get to where it could get to, there really needs to be buy-in at the get-go. And that's something that we'll be exploring further. And just briefly, to tie this in, there's another project that I'm working on, which is the D4NZ project, which is looking to showcase a what we call a smart basin for the offshore energy sector, effectively a digital twin for the offshore energy sector. Now, the importance of everything that I've just said is that none of this is achievable if we don't really sort out the first step, which is actually collaborating with data effectively, getting organizations to work together to develop these rich digital twins. So I just wanted to emphasize that point, that there's a real effort underneath the hood to develop data ecosystems so that we can fully harness the potential of digital twins. And that is my presentation. So thank you very much. If anyone wants to reach out, please do connect on LinkedIn. Otherwise, reach out to John. I'm sure he can connect you with myself. So thank you very much.
So Blair, a question for you, if I could please, is can you provide a brief summary of the findings of what you found in the landscape? There are plenty of data hubs out there, so we'd be interested to have an opinion on why we're still seeing a lack of adoption of the value in data.
Yeah, sure. So a brief summary of our landscape. Yeah, I think there's various efforts that are ongoing in the offshore energy sector specifically. The most notable one would be OSDU. That's a large collaboration that's really looking to get organizations to collaborate around data and models and work collaboratively around specific industrial operational challenges. There's a range of other types of initiatives that are on the onshore sector. I guess one that stands out most notably would be, say, Icebreaker 1. But there's a few there, and what we've done as part of the project was we've created a report here, so that will become publicly available in future. So I'm happy to share that with a wider audience. And why do we see a lack of adoption of value? Yeah, so the adoption piece is the most challenging part of this. I think fundamentally what we've experienced was that I think people are just a little bit weary of really. I guess it's when it comes to new technologies and it comes to working collaboratively with other companies, I think organizations are a bit weary or a bit unsure of the benefits that will bring. But until they actually, put in the effort, it's kind of chicken and egg in a sense. So yeah, I think fundamentally though, and I touched on this in the presentation, I think a lot of organizations who are committed to collaborating really need to have a think about how their staff, their personnel, their job roles are built in such a way that will give them time and effort to do that. Otherwise, they just it's seen as another add-on, if you like.
Blair, next question for yourself, please, is can we find the details of the challenges you mentioned and the approaches you took somewhere online?
Not at the moment, but they will be published soon. So we're just near to the end of the project, but as part of the deliverables, there'll be a benefits report that'll come out that'll sum up the lessons learned and the challenges that we faced. So in time, yeah, that'll be available over the next 3 to 4 months, I would expect.
Very good. Thank you, Blair. Our next question, Blair, again is yourself, is what strategies have you deployed to ensure stakeholder engagement?
Yeah, sure. So we had a range of strategies. Really, I think fundamentally, we had obviously the steering committee, etc., that we used as part of the project that kept everyone engaged with what we were doing. We run workshops, we did demonstrations, we did one-to-ones, interviews, surveys, really just everything that we could use to get that engagement, understand the problems. That's fundamentally what we applied within the project. But that being said, my experience was that we did all that, lots of positivity, but you still couldn't really get people out of their day job to really, build on the ecosystem and work together.
And our final question, I think, because it's to both of you, and then we're going to close after this, is you both presented government-funded projects with strong data sharing interoperability themes. Where do you see the overlaps or distinctions between your approaches?
Yeah, I'll absolutely agree with that. It's not a case of whether it's centralized or decentralized. I think for us, we were just trying to showcase that this is technically feasible. There was a lot of myths that go around in these types of settings and these types of applications, and we look to dispel that from a technical perspective. I think for us, we just want to showcase that this is technically feasible, and that really, if organizations are committed to this, then that commitment needs to be, needs to follow through right to the right level.